Hello and welcome to 5 o'clock on a Tuesday. We've gone through the Monday blues. We're on to the Tuesday, and we decide it is now deep enough into the week. It's time to start drinking. I am one of your two hosts, Rob, a.k.a. Lantern Noir, and with me is the amazing...
Graybeard's Tavern.
And how has your week been thus far, my good friend?
Good. I mean, work got nutty today, and hence it's always good to have happy hour to come home to. Uh, so yeah, Thursday we played Masks. It was awesome. There again, awkward teen angst over on Indoor Adventures channel. Sunday morning, because of Mother's Day, I did not stream. I'm playing a game now that I'm going to do a real beginner's guide for, because I'm tired of not having real beginner guides to games. So I'm gonna bust that out. So that'll be on my YouTube probably next Monday or Tuesday. And my Saturday night Grognard game, we were in outer space, ended with an awesome cliffhanger. I don't think they listened to this, so it's a game that's got a lot of stuff happens on charts, and you have to, like, oh god, it's, I have failed, you as the DM have to make something horrible happen or whatever. The DM gets a move, and so and the DM's never rolled dice in the whole game, in the game system. So what I did was I ad hoc stole a Netflix movie prop, or plot. Speaking of plots, it's called Space Sweepers. It's out of Korea. It's brand new. It's a Netflix original, and it is a really fun space romp, blah blah blah. So I stole the thing to it, and I threw it at the party, and they've been hauling around this young girl in a cryo chamber for like 2 episodes now. And then at the very end of the last episode, there was like space mines and the fighting and blaster fire and all that. And at the very end, as they're swooping away, they hear a little voice say, "Where's the bathroom?" And they turn, and the little girl's just standing there. Somehow she got out of her cryo chamber, and they were all like, "Ah!" And I'm like, and fade to black, credits go up. And they're like, "Oh, we hate you."
The very best of cutscenes.
Uh-huh.
Well, that sounds a lot like how I ended our Candlekeep game last Wednesday, which we're going to be resuming this week. We're still on track to finish it. And the Jansen, played by Lenarius, is haunted. And they were starting to really go down some dark roads with their demons talking to them, and they've been plotting to do some evil. And they had just used their father's short bow, and they had just forced the magic through it, the Zen energy that powers it. Yeah. And so the last scene was a scene of their father appearing, like Obi-Wan-esque,
Jedi ghost,
and just shaking his head with the only as a father can show his disapproval.
I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed.
And that was the note we ended on. And Lenars was like, "Oh, I want to know more." I'm like, "No, it's not happening. Not this week.
Keep him hungry."
Yes. And they're actually playing through Kingdom Hearts right now. They just started a fresh playthrough. They'd never played it before. So they're in Kingdom Hearts 1. And they just had the fight with Shadow Sora. Where it's Sora versus Shadow Sora. And I can't remember where I don't know where that is in the story. It's been so long, but I'm like, ooh, making Jansen fight a Shadow Jansen would be a really fun twist. And it would create some really neat opportunities for the party to have to deal with stuff. I'm like, yeah, this is going to get cool. I'm liking this.
Nice.
So we're going to probably go off script a little bit in the next couple of weeks, just because we've got these neat opportunities that have come up through the Candlekeep mystery.
Mm-hmm.
which kind of defangs my plan of no prep nights.
Ah.
And then for me, Sunday night was Mother's Day, and
Mm-hmm.
two of my players could not play because of Mother's Day commitments, which is great. Mrs. Noir had to work, so I didn't even get the option of saying let's spend the evening going out to a quiet dinner somewhere,
Right.
because she had to be at her computer at 5, and as a result, I ended up streaming XCOM 2,
Oh,
which I hadn't played in a while. It's one of my favorite games ever, and it was like a
yeah.
really fun. It was like a busy night for me.
Yeah.
And I'll take it. It was fun to get that game up on the table, get that game to the table, as it were, and remind myself how much I actually enjoy in the context. I enjoy a good tactical RPG
Yeah.
in the context.
Yes. I I've been looking for a World War II squad tactical game that is everything that's out there is either like high fantasy or over caricatured, where oh look, you have the French saboteur,
Yep.
and stuff, and it's overdone that way. It's Nick Fury and this Howling Commandos,
Not
or
that there's anything wrong with that.
no, but that's not the game I'm looking for. I'm looking for a build your squad, you run your squad, blah 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 blah, and yeah, so it's different. It's hard to find,
No.
but yeah, I do enjoy a good tactics game.
Yeah, those are. I mean, there's. I'm trying to think. I can't think of any either that I've come across that
Yeah,
have done a really good job of that.
so there used to be like early 2000s. There was from Avalon Hill, there was Squad Leader and Advanced Squad Leader. There's a thing called Lock and Load Tactics that's kind of that way, but it's literally a board game with little chits. And you move, it's a hex map, and you move the chits along the board, the maps and stuff, like the old Avalon Hill games, which I don't have a problem with, but the gameplay in that one's a little weird. Silent Storm is out there, but again, it's the thing I was talking about. There's Partisans, which I'm looking into because it's on sale, and just in case anybody cares, what's the other one that's out there? Warsaw. But Warsaw is World War II saboteurs and such, but it's but it's Darkest Dungeon, but World War II.
Got it.
So again, very cute, a lot of fun. I mean, it's not cute. I shouldn't say that. It is horribly dark, and you will lose because they lost. The partisans died and everything. So you go into it. It's very, very sad and emotional, but it's, the art is all cute, like Darkest Dungeon. It's got that dark and the dark line shading, but it's all World War II stuff, so.
Okay, just to go down this rabbit hole a bit further with games, have you ever come across By Your Orders, the card game?
No, but
Okay, give me 1 second.
By Your Orders.
Yeah, it's a really interesting. It's a cooperative card game of World War One.
Oh, nice.
And it's one where each player plays a member of an actual. Turn to warm, please. Plays an actual member of a squad that went off from France to fight in the war.
Yeah.
And there's some real history behind it. The artwork was done by one of the people that was killed in the Charlie Hebdo attack.
Oh, wow.
I know. There's like that additional bit of like, oh wow, there's some real story here.
Yeah.
But it's a very challenging card game in that you're constantly battling. Like you're staying in the fight as long as you can, because when you retreat, you can't play cards to help overcome the challenge anymore. Right. But if you push yourself past what you can comfortably handle, you become a bigger liability to the squad.
Nice.
So it's all about balancing. Like, okay, I guess I'm out now because if I don't go now, I might not get back next time, and you guys don't want me shell shocked for the next round.
Right.
But if you leave now, we're not going to get enough cards out. Well, I don't know what to tell you guys.
Yeah. That's
It's a
awesome.
really good, challenging tactical card, not tactical, but just hand management card game.
So there was such a lack of that like 3 years ago that I was writing one. and it was really interesting because about 10 or 15 years ago, there was a couple of them. There was a World War II one, and there was another one, and I can't remember, Trial by Fire or something like that. And and then a modern one, and it was a lot of fun. It was a 2-player, so you could play those back and forth. And now there's like a one called Cards, that's Cards with a K, and it's World War II, and it's pretty good. But yeah, I like cooperative card games. I wrote one maybe 10 years ago now that's called It Takes a Village, where you're all building a medieval village with all the bits and bobs of it, and you have basically a year track, and you're playing like 10 years in the village, and by year 10 you see if your village has died or not. It's fun. I had a deal for a company to make it, and it fell through, and now So, anybody listening to this podcast, if you want to play It Takes a Village, give Graybeard Tavern a yell.
It's ready. It's publication ready. You just got to get it out there, pick it up, print it, slap it in a box, and ship it out.
They just need artwork. Because I've got artwork, but it was all the artwork I have is pictures I took from the internet. So
nothing you can publish yet.
Nothing I could publish, but play.
I hear you on that one. I absolutely do hear you. In fact, when I worked on a card game briefly about standardized testing. And it was supposed to be, I think I called it Pencils Down. And it was supposed to be one where your goal was like a combination deck builder, hand management. You were building up a school so you could pass the standardized tests. And I looked into like buying pictures of students. There are websites where it's like you could buy stock photos for like $1 a shot. With reprint permissions,
right?
And that's the key: is you gotta make sure you gotta get your reprint permissions, because that's not always easy. And my the one novel I published, the web novel I was publishing in like serials. I bought the rights to a photograph. I actually went in for the whole like exclusives. I think it was like $100.
Yeah.
To like own the picture of the blood dripping off the black rose. So, yeah, I have that somewhere in my files. And the thing is, I never finished it.
Oh.
I got into like the climax, and at that point, school was starting up again, and my readership had dropped off because it was a weekly vote. The way I wrote it was, I posted the chapter on Monday, and people had until Friday to vote on what would happen.
Oh.
And then I would write the next chapter over the weekend.
Right. Oh, yeah. Nice.
And that was really fun when it started, but then as the readership kind of petered out, I was like, I've gained like 2 votes a week. This really isn't fun anymore.
Yeah.
And I should revisit that format because it really was a hoot and a half to kind of like just think, well, I just have to get my main character to a decision point. So every chapter was she needs to get to a moment where she has to pick which road to go down. And so it wasn't so much writing to keep the plot moving. It was just, well, how do I find an interesting choice for her?
Right.
To keep this going so that the people can pick and choose what happens to her, which was still a lot of fun. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, but that's just kind of where that kind of went when it went.
Right.
And then I've got Sunday. I've got my I'm gearing up for Curse of Strahd, which will be fun.
Right.
I keep forgetting because it's been so long since we've played our traditional group.
Right.
That it's a little tricky to try to gear up for it. But so that's where that's at. The topic this week, there was a conversation on, and again, I get a lot of our stuff because I'm very active on Matt Corville's Discord group.
Oh, yeah,
There's always a good conversation in the DM's advice area. And this one came out of the idea of how to resolve the problem of killing your parties as a DM. Yeah. Yeah, for those that are listening on the podcast, I'm going to apologize. My wife and I are co-working, and she gets really excited at work, and I'm not allowed to shush her. She's allowed to shush me when she's working, but I'm not allowed to shush her when I'm working. So I'm watching the meters to make sure that I'm at least talking over her, and I'm muting myself when I'm not.
Okay, I just didn't know if you knew or not because you got earbuds in. So because I can't when I'm doing a show, my significant other can stand at the top of the stairs and yell, and I can't hear her. So, yeah.
No, I'm aware it's there, and we've had conversations, but there's only so much I can do, and still not end up on the couch.
I totally understand.
So
Coville's.
But yeah, so the conversation was that a DM was lamenting the fact that he can't seem to please his party. And the problem was if he gave encounters that were too easy, the party would complain that, oh, we're just kind of rolling through this. This isn't very fun. There's no real challenge here.
Yeah.
And so he changed his game up to start throwing some harder and harder encounters at him, and he almost wiped the party. To which the party said, well, that wasn't fun. You suck. and it then led to a conversation about, well, how do you balance killing the party off? Like, what do you do when you realize in an encounter that this is harder than you had intended and you're about to wipe the party out? Or the dice are just not in their favors. The DC is 10, but no one has made their save versus paralysis yet.
Right.
What do you do with that?
Well, and so we kind of talked about this before a little bit. So check our past podcasts. But you have to either, depending on what you've set up in session 0 and all that, you either go with it and decide as a crew, hey, you're all dead. Do you want to have a god intervene? Do you want, I think the example we used last time was, the band of elves you met last week, everybody's full, all the bad guys are full of arrows, and you're Deus Ex Machina'd by a band of elven wayfarers, or rangers or whatever. And I think that's a way to pull them out of the fire, but also, maybe say, guys, that's the last one of you going down. Here's some options. You can wake up in prison. You can be saved by the elves you met last week. You can, be killed off and start again. You can be the adventurers looking for your guys' soul stones because you were all imprisoned in gems by the BB, EG, and now your souls are there. And so your next party is going to save this party by getting the soul gems back, and you all get resurrected or whatever. I would say lay it on the table. Just be like, guys, this isn't going bad. Now, also, I would have, prior to that, when it started to go bad, I would have probably said, hey, you, cleric, what's your wisdom? Oh, it's 18. You, and I've done this where I usually use notes, and I'll write a note that says, you will not survive this encounter. Underline. You are wise enough to know that you can't win this battle, and I'll give it to them, and then they can do what they want with it. And then 2 rounds later, after the cleric, casts his last 3rd level spell, I look at the wizard and I'm like, hey, Wiz, what's your intelligence? Oh, yeah, okay. You are smart enough to know that you are not gonna survive this encounter. Underline. Pass it to him and pray that he goes, fellas, we must teleport out and regroup.
Dimension door. We're done.
Yep. Come back with a wand of fireball.
Which is not the worst of strategies. The conversation really got onto the concept of plot armor when I brought up that I don't like to see PCs face final death purely on bad dice. I can't think of too many stories that I've enjoyed watching where the dice just keep falling the wrong way effectively for the heroes, and then they die.
Yep.
And like I'm a big believer of there should be like a memorable story behind character death, which then got brought out the accusation. Oh, so you wrap your characters in plot armor. And it's weird because to a degree I'm willing to say, yeah, kinda, because I want to be sure that there's a good story. And unless the dice are so comically bad that the bad dice become the story, I don't like seeing my characters killed off when I'm writing a game.
Yeah. It's always, Glorfindel, the barbarian of the north, or of the east wind is flat killed by a goblin arrow. That just, if that was in a book, you would be like, what the hell?
I mean, well,
who the
Game of Thrones kind of started to push the envelope with, we're going to randomly whack some characters from time to time.
And Cornwell's, Saxon Tales, or in Game of Thrones, or in Sharp's Rifles, or, a World War II book, that's fine. That's great. But in fantasy, it's not just the random death.
Did you see how many arrows Sean Bean took before he went down in Lord of the Rings?
Exactly.
I mean, that's like, that's a story behind it.
Yes.
But that gets into that. And there was something else, a term I had not used before that I realized I was using, which is player investment insurance. Because the more I think about it, because here's what's happened to a degree, and I adore them, and I talk about them as kindly as I can, because I think these are great things. But my Wednesday night game, Linarius, has on their website for their merch, their character's portrait on a t-shirt.
Oh.
Now, I know they didn't do this to ensure their character doesn't get killed randomly.
Yeah.
But I'm not ready for that drama of my character died because of a bunch of bad dice rolls. Like that's I mean, I'm not saying that there would be a lot of really bad, like they'd hate me or something, but I think it'd be kind of rough to go, that was my character I played for a couple of weeks in a D&D game, and then I just couldn't roll higher than a 10 for a night and my character died.
Yes.
And it's like, not that, and this is the first time I've ever had a player who put their character on a t-shirt and sold it.
Right.
Which I highly recommend you pick up, because they're an amazing streamer and they deserve all of our support. And I kind of like the idea that a character that was made for my D&D game is on somebody's t-shirt.
Heck yeah. Yeah. The thing too is that if it was, they grabbed the warlock and plummeted themselves and the warlock to death upon the rocks below. That's a story. There's a story, and you can have art commissioned of them laying on the rocks with the waves and the starlight upon them, or something, and sell the second t-shirt because it was so awesome. Where if again, she trips, falls down this 22 flights of stairs, and that's 22 d6 fall. Damn, oh, you tripped and fell down the stairs.
And I think it's this weird twist between the old and the new. We talked in the past about how much investment we used to put into our characters, and how we would show up to games with like a folder full of character sheets. And I couldn't imagine asking a player now to bring a couple of backups just in case.
Yep.
The amount of energy that not only they put in, but I put in to the characters they've made for the game, where it's like there's just a lot of work that went into this and goes into it week after week. Where some times when I've run games, it's been, if you bring a character journal next time, you can start with inspiration. and that became like, I think everyone always had inspiration, or a luck point, or whatever we were using mechanically at the time, because we'd play our game, and over the next month they'd sit down and they'd type up their little personal journal of what happened from their point of view. And then we email it out to everybody, and we'd all have so we had that constant, on the one hand, it kept it fresh in everyone's mind.
Mm-hmm.
It kept it active in everyone's heads. Don't forget, we got this game coming up. Excuse me. And we know we're going to be getting together because we just emailed everybody again.
Yeah.
The journal, the not so secret diary of Squire Elric. And so that got everybody kind of fired up. And then we come to the game table. And it's just so weird to me. It's weird to me to not think about the option of giving my players a certain amount of insurance that they're going to look back on these and go, well, I really wasted a lot of time.
Right.
That I didn't even get to a good end of the arc.
Yeah. Yep. Now,
however,
two, with that said, of course, my cartoon brain went off to the journal of Davendale the Bard, day 47 of the journey, still the prettiest.
Mm-hmm.
Look up the Diary of Legolas sometime.
Oh, that had just broken when my buddy Jeff was playing this halfling squire.
Perfect.
And so it was absolutely a parody of the parody.
Perfect. So yeah, it's one of those things where if you talked about it beforehand, and there's so many ways, and I know this is a whole discussion that people have had, but there are so many ways to save a character now.
Yeah.
Revivify, resurrection, greater, what is it called even? Anyway, reincarnation. There's so many different things or ways you can bring a character back that save the dying, all that stuff is kind of like, or spare the dying, sorry. It's almost good that characters can die. It makes it more immersive. So for instance, I was playing in Sir Lucian's game, and we were on the ropes. These like Vegapygmies and they're vine hounds and stuff really had us cornered. We were cornered. They were taking us out, and my guy went down. Blah. I rolled a 20 on my death save, and so pop back up 1 hit point, healed the rogue, down again. But the rogue who had been popped back up with my healing was able to rejoin the fight, and so those are times where you're just like nail biting. Wow, that was if we had died there, it would have been like awesome. So I don't know. You got to take your deaths when they come. If you have decided we roll the dice out in the open on the table and the dice decide, sorry, Sir Calvin, you died of a kobold infection. They stabbed you with their little spear. You laid in the wagon for a month and slowly died of sepsis. It happens. And so at the same time, I can't imagine running a game nowadays without going into it saying we're gonna play the grittiest, most hardcore, grimdark campaign ever. You're gonna starve to death most likely.
Well, it's interesting too, because I was just thinking as you were talking there about it, is that in this day and age of the way with 5th edition rules for death and dying, which are incredibly lax, it becomes one where I almost think that makes it worse when the dice turn against the players and they die.
Yeah.
Like you get those up, like the player character goes down and you're like, okay, start making your death saves. There's the 5%, well, slightly more than 12% chance that they're going to pop back up again.
Yep.
I mean, it's not a high, but it's around 10 to 12% that they're just going to pop back in with a natural 20 on one of their 3 death saves.
Yep.
Which now they've done the math on that, that's an incredibly high number. But it's 5% chance that you'll roll a 20, and you only have to do it once out of 3 rolls. So it is like I said, roughly around there ish, 10% ish. You get those epic moments. But on the other hand, if you fail all 3 of them, which is way more likely than popping back up again,
right?
With a natural 20, it's like, man, that's just twisting the knife even more that your character just died.
Right.
And I think if I'm being totally honest, I'm kind of a lazy DM.
All right.
And here's why I think that. It is so much easier to fudge the dice rolls behind the screen to let the party limp along and come out with 1 hit point than it is to say, okay, so your guy died and the party really wants to resurrect them. So let's figure out something else you can play while you wait for the party to resurrect them and work them into the story and get the party to trust them. And I got to figure out the encounter now for you to get the money together because you're 4th level and it's expensive. And it's like, man, that's a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's just easier to let them scrape along with 1 hit point and be mildly humiliated than it is to kill them off and then try to figure out how to bring them back again.
So Pathfinder Society. In Pathfinder Society, it was a faux pas, as it were, to not have your own rod of healing. If you as a character didn't have a rod of healing, it was sort of acceptable at the table that if you went down and they couldn't take your rod of healing and heal you with it, that they could let you die and let you sit there for 3 hours while everyone else finishes the session. And then at the end, they could all pool in some fate character points to then let you be resurrected and be back, for the next session somewhere else within the greater not this city area or whatever, if you were playing at conventions or whatever and playing Pathfinder Society. But yeah, it was, like I said, there's so many ways not to die in this. Like for instance, I think it was Cody in Take 20, Matt Koval, and one other of the big DM talk show people, YouTubers and whatnot. I think they all had said at one point that Healing Word breaks D&D. When D&D first started, they were very against Healing Word because the cleric doesn't have to go to the person to heal them anymore. So the cleric can stand in back and be like, Healing Word, Healing Word. Oh, he went down. Healing Word. They pop back up, with 4 hit points. But
4 hit points is a stiff breeze.
Yeah, well, but that's what I'm saying is that was a big controversy 4 years ago when D&D 5th edition first really started taking on steam or gaining steam. It really was, people were angry. They were like, is this breaking the game? And I'm like, no. And now that we're 5 years in, nobody thinks that. no one thinks the healing word is. It's just become part of the norm that, you go down, the bard plays a little tune in the background, and boing, you get a couple hit points, enough to crawl away or whatever.
You're encouraged enough that you pick yourself up off the ground and drag yourself away. I think that's another one of those tangentially that I want to get better at narrating, is to get away from hit points as health points.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the mechanics don't make sense. Like healing word, it doesn't make a ton of sense as a I have fixed your wounds at distance. I mean, granted, it's a divine spell, but it's one of those where it's like I always kind of imagined healing magic that deals with wounds is ones that you kind of have to like see what you're doing,
right?
Have a sense for exactly like where the blood is, so to speak, or coming from. Whereas when you divorce yourself from hit points as a legitimate health point thing, you get some more room to go, okay, yeah, the cleric does remind me that we serve a greater purpose that will compel me to push myself a little bit harder, to go a little bit further.
Yeah.
And welcome aboard, Crimson. We're glad to have you here with us live on Twitch as part of our conversation about the pros and cons of plot armor, which is a little bit connected to our previous conversations about watching how we balance combat encounters for the party and plot armor.
Sorry.
Well,
plot armor.
It's funny too. I was thinking about that this morning. Also on the tangent front, when I was making mods for Neverwinter Nights, it had a literal plot armor setting. So in the toolkit, you could toggle the plot. It's just called plot. If anything was labeled was plot, yes, plot true. If character dot plot equals true, then they took no damage from anything.
Nice.
They could not be destroyed. They couldn't but the funny thing is the AI separated was attacked by from takes damage from.
Yeah.
And so the problem I kept running into was I was trying to script Irina from Ravenloft to be a follower.
Oh.
And this was before they had easy scripts to create your own followers. And she kept getting killed. I'm like, well, yeah, but okay, so she dies. It's not the end of the world. The module still works. But a lot of the dialogue works better when she's there. So I kept trying to keep her alive. And at one point I did a test run with her plot checked on. So I literally handed her some plot armor. And the group I was running with accidentally caught her in a fireball.
Oh.
So she took no damage.
Okay.
But she had been attacked by a party member. And the overarching result of that was that she became hostile to the party.
Right.
And so, so unfortunately, she's now hostile to the party and cannot be killed.
Right. Oh no.
And so it was like, it was a
death.
total party wipe because, what's up?
Can I say hi?
You can say hi, honey. We have to have a quick intercession here from the kitty K.
Woo woo.
Okay, there we go. Where and I felt bad because that was during my playtesting phases. So that's be like I'd work on the module. I think I was on summer vacation, so I'd work on the module all day.
Yeah.
Enjoy an evening with Mrs. Noir, and then she'd go to bed, and I'd pour myself I get out a 2 liter of Pepsi, and I would just run it online with people.
Right.
And so that was one of my okay, well that play test didn't work. There's some D20 systems that have tried to move away from hit points. Star Wars role-playing game comes to mind as an example. Yeah, more and more of them are trying to get away from wounds and into some other kind of a mechanic. I also think this another theory I have on that, Ben, you can tell me if you agree with this, is also to get away from the violence side of it.
Right. So again, I have many years of actual fighting experience, and so a lot of my fights and descriptions are based on real world how you do it, and so it's really hard to say with deck, you take another arrow hit. Oh, you've got 4 arrows sticking out of you now in story as you're telling it, but then they're like, boom, someone boop, hits you with cure wounds, and the arrows just like fire out of you, and the things are sealed and go on. So yeah, I like doing the descriptions, but then that does lead to the, like you're saying, healing word is the gash they got from the broad axe of the orc. It mends itself together under the magic. If you don't do it, you would have to include that in the descriptions, like those arrows are, say that someone shot an arrow and it only did like 2 or 3 points of damage. You would be like, the arrow narrowly whips past your head, blah blah blah, and you would have to describe it as, yeah, you'd have to twist your descriptions. So I think getting away from the hit point thing is, hit points are built into the system. You can think of them any way you want, but it makes describing the combats hard, particularly in something like D&D, where it's like I've always said, it's the Fred Flintstone bat 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 bat. You stand there and each hit each other until someone goes, oh, I'm out, and keels over. So yeah, the sci-fi system I'm using for the Grognard game on Saturday nights, the way it does is everybody's got like 4 or 5 hit points, and it's, I've been hit. Oh, I'd better get, or I need aid. Then it's something else. Then it's I'm unconscious, and then I'm dead. Mm-hmm. And at any point in the mechanics, you can retreat from the fight for a round and do the recover move. Unless you're unconscious, someone else has to move you from the fight and try to revive you. So yeah, I do like systems that are doing that. I also like systems that have levels of damage that then affect the mechanics.
Yes.
I've always said, again, with the Fred Flintstone fighting of D&D, the barbarian stands there all day long swinging that great axe, and until he has 0 hit points, he hits just as hard as when he has 108 hit points.
Well, that's Crimson brings up the point too, that when you have a really high number of hit points, which is the way 5th edition has managed scaling difficulty, has been through it's been through hit points. Yeah. A 10th level fighter has a lot more hit points to play with than a 2nd, which is supposed to represent their increased ability to survive a good fight.
Yeah.
Rather than relying on the ever escalating armor classes or the ever escalating bonuses on damage that we had in previous systems, which tangentially to our current tangent, which is tangential to our original topic, I had thought for my D&D night on Sunday, since I wasn't running actual D&D, I was going to fire up Baldur's Gate Enhanced Edition. And I'm like, man, it's going to be kind of weird going back to 3.5 to play a game online. And then I got in there like, oh, no, Baldur's Gate, that's Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. It has THAC0.
Yeah.
And bonuses to THAC0. And I'm like, oh my, and that's
level caps based on race.
Yeah, and that's where I'm like, I'm going back to I'm going to play something else. I can't do this to myself. I just can't do it. Our video game's better because you can as many positive and negatives, and they all get auto calculated. Are you processing that, or are you ready to field it?
I'm processing.
I'll field then while you process.
Okay, go ahead.
Because here's my thing. I think that's not wrong. That yes, the computer does all that pre-calculating, but even with D&D Beyond doing all that calculating, I still prefer the less calculating. I still like my streamlined systems. Even in video games, I can get lost in is this really going to make that much of a difference? And how do I know the right build? And that's not my game. I'm not a maximize my build player. I'm more of a, this looks fun, let's try it player.
One last little bit to the tangent, and then I've got a couple of things back on plot armor to talk that have some video game interface here. But systems, there are systems out there who I want to, my intention is to murder the mayor, and you build the dice pool and you roll and you either murder the mayor or you don't. And so, and then you build a story around that. There is no hit point pools or any of that. It's more like playing a book than, playing a video game. Now, back to plot armor and video games. One of the earliest things that happened to me in one of the greatest video series of all times, in Fallout, I got to one of the first merchants, and for whatever reason, I didn't know what I was doing. I ended up shooting at him, which he then turned on me, and I ended up murdering him. Then the town turned on me, and pretty much the game was over, because there was no way without that first merchant I was going to be able to get high enough levels and materials to finish the game. Then they got smart in later versions of Fallout, where there were some people who cannot die. Sorry, plot armor. They are part of the plot. You cannot walk in and just, and blow them away. And then in Skyrim, merchants could die, but not by like your hand. But if they were for some reason to get outside and a dragon attack, the dragon could roast them. And then that merchant is gone forever. Nobody is like, hey, look, an empty store, I think I'll be a merchant. They are just out of the game. And so, so plot armor, nice. I would much rather have in my storyline, the dragon lands on the shop and chaos and fire. And then in the end, oh, look, Baxter, the bower, is alive. Pull him from the wreckage, dust him off, and
he's been hiding under there the whole time. How perfect is that? Exactly. Well, and it gets into, I think it starts to, a lot of that plot armor literally was around the idea that when they published the game, they had a plan. They wanted you to go through these major bullet points. And even Skyrim, I think, is a great example of a game that's very, very sandbox based. I think I've only completed the main storyline once, and I'm easily 300 hours on it. Yes. And the only time I finished the story was there was one summer week where I said, you know what, I'm going to make a point of playing through the Skyrim main storyline, and I mainlined it. I just, any side quests I did were like, where's the side quest take me? Nope, not doing it.
Yeah.
Like if it's not on the main quest path, I'm not doing it. I don't care where that sword went. I don't care how sad you are that you lost it. I don't care that your husband's, not really doing what he needs to do because he's too depressed. Here's 5 gold. Hire somebody else to do it for you, hon. I'm not touching it.
If only someone would save my child who is lost in the woods. Lady, really, there's got to be a ranger around here somewhere. Dragons.
I would, but your son is to the west and I'm going east. So that's the way that works. But, and I think in a lot of ways, depending on how you organize, I think dungeon masters who focus on, here are the bullet points in the story we're going to go through where the players will have these big choices to make, are the ones most likely to say, I kind of want my players to live to see them. Whereas in a much more sandboxy game where it's like, well, the players decided they wanted to try to take over the town and put their own gang in as the new shadow government. Well, They chose to do that. I had no say in that. I think I'm more likely to go, I haven't really invested a lot of my energy into a story here. Don't bother me none of a couple of the PCs die.
Right. Right.
Whereas
Yeah.
like now I've put a no small amount of time to like, how is Jansen going to rid themselves of their demons?
Right.
And now it's like, oh, and Jansen randomly died of a kobold arrow before we had an opportunity to deal with their demons. Well, I'm sure glad I spent 40 hours working on a series of encounters, plots, and NPCs.
All those ticked boxes in different episodes where you went out of your way to live. Here's the breadcrumb and the spice that's going to pay off in the oven. You know, the roast is there. And in episode 22, we'll find out X.
Yeah,
all that's gone.
And at episode 21, there's a power outage and the oven never heats up again.
Exactly.
It's like, well, what are we doing here? Having a larger pool of stamina. Oh, we're back on health points. Larger pool of stamina points that get expended before health points would explain the strain of battle and trying to avoid gain hit crits going damage directly to health. Yes, there are several kinds of mechanics that tie to that that I've seen in games. 7th Sea does a really neat job of doing minor wounds followed by it's not mortal wounds, it's critical wounds.
Oh, okay.
I think it's critical wounds.
Yeah.
And 4 critical wounds and you're out.
Yeah.
And what's neat is when you get to your second major wound or critical wound, you start rolling, you get bonuses. Because that's where the story's picking up and you're becoming more heroic.
Yeah.
Pillars of Eternity. I just downloaded that. I haven't had a chance to play it yet. Pillars of Eternity. Like I said, if I hadn't been playing XCOM 2, I had a bunch of RPGs I was ready to take on, and then I started playing XCOM 2. I'm like, I just love this game too much. I could probably become a full-time XCOM 2 streamer if I wasn't careful. And my poor PC hates running it because I have way too many mods. I'm glad I'll definitely be checking it out. And to answer Aaron Tier's point, yes, absolutely, I am. Jansen's demons are a neat part of their character, and Lenarius and I have discussed the idea of curing them of the demons and what that would mean. And it's one of those where we both know what is at stake if we do that, because it will change the character. On the other hand, it's like, well, that's part of what's supposed to happen.
Yeah. Characters being dynamic and change is good.
Yeah, the one kind of plot armor you really can't give your characters is the armor of never changing. Because at a certain and sometimes that will kill characters more than and that's like to me that's the best kind of character death. When you get to a moment in the campaign, you're like, my character is finished. I had it happen to me most notably in my brain at a LARP, because a lot of my tabletop games I don't get to be a player often enough.
Yeah.
And the few times I've been a player, I've never been in the game long enough that we got to an ending.
Right.
But I played in a LARP, and I played as a young half-elven ranger whose last conversation with his father was, stay here, I'll be right back.
Oh.
I'm going to go scout over there. And then never came back. And so he kind of like eventually said, well, I guess I'm on my own. I guess I'm going to go do my thing.
Yeah.
And so it was a chance for me to kind of get back into being that young, innocent, naive, I'm going to trust people. I'm going to do the right thing because that's what you do.
Yeah.
And you're noble and you're honorable. And after like a year of playing, he was a knight in the House of Justice. He had kind of gotten the girl as much as anyone was ever going to get a girl in a LARP where you didn't actually hook up for reals.
Yep.
But a woman who was in the game and our characters had built this relationship, and we had both kind of said, we're not really into each other, but our characters are.
Right. It happens.
Yeah, and we were both really cool about it. And then something else, there was a third factor. I was like, I don't have any reason to do this anymore. He's checked all the boxes. He's kind of done.
Yeah.
And it felt kind of good to say, and he leaves.
Yeah.
He goes off to the county seat to work under the Duke as a as a knight and as a circuit judge,
Yeah.
basically. And that was the end of his arc. And it was almost as sad as if someone had said, and your character is dead and you can't play him anymore. Because I'm like, I can't play him anymore. There's nothing to do with him.
Right. And again, sometimes stories just end. You know, sometimes it's just done, and that's okay. Two, it's interesting that who do you give plot armor to? Because if you kill a party's favorite NPC, it might be used in a way that they're like, oh yeah, that was great. Okay, now vengeance for Baxter the Bower, who was crushed by the dragon landing on his shop. Now the plot would be, oh, we loved Baxter, damn you, dragon, we'll kill you one day. That's all.
We're having a small technical issue here. Apologize to everyone that's on the podcast. We're going to have to edit this out, possibly. Let's see if we can get Graybeard back.
I've seen this a lot.
Okay, so we're I'm gonna throw us into a little BRB while we sort out our tech issues. We'll be nope. Nope. 3. This is ground control to Graybeard Tavern. Do you copy Graybeard Tavern? Nope, you're on mute.
Graybeard is here. Hello.
All right, good. We got you back. Did you get the unstable internet connection? Because I didn't see it.
I didn't get anything. Nothing flashed or bipped here. You just went, uh-oh, and and we're gone.
Okay, because you froze. You were mid talking about the vengeance.
Oh. Yeah, and so characters would, want to get vengeance, and that would be a good storyline. It is okay, and I love seeing this now in games, particularly stream games where you have a really involved chat, where the party will call out plot armor. They will be like, nope, this NPC, he is the sweetest boy, you cannot hurt him. It is, la la la, and it's good to kibitz and back and forth and go, okay, yeah, I will, duly place the plot armor upon Baxter the Bower so that he can, survive and live forever because he's the best boy. It is very viable. LB, it went at one point to Indoor and said, this NPC, I do not want anything bad to happen to them. They are the wholesome part of my character, and if they die or are taken out of the game, my character will become a different character, and I don't want to play that character. So they talked it out, and it all worked out in the end. But sometimes you got to give that plot armor.
Well, and that gets into that investment component of when you're designing a character or an NPC or a story arc, and you're like, these are things that are really important to the story, or they're important to us as players. Mm-hmm. You want to have some flexibility to say, look, this is just too significant of a thing to be left to chance.
Right.
I don't want to deal with the fallout from a negative consequence here, having my character lose his sister or losing their ward. And I think it's also very mature to say, look, I know that an easy way to get drama is to go after the families or go after the friends. Right. And it's a good way to ramp tension up quick, because nothing gets a party fired up like, oh, they took our favorite Bower. Mm-hmm. And it'd be like with my Candlekeep game, if something ever were to happen to Stephen the Guard,
right?
They would probably. I think they care more about Stephen the Guard than they do Connie the Artificer, because of just that relationship they forge with him right out of the bat. That sense of like, he's kind of a nobody,
right?
And he gets that he's kind of a nobody, and he's finding contentment and being just a little more of a nobody than the average nobody is. And there, I think for a lot of people, that sense of like, we all kind of feel like we're nobodies a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And to have that zen of like, hey, I know I'm kind of a nobody, but I try pretty hard to be a decent nobody is like, wow. Whereas if anything happened to him, I think they would go off the rails. Like they would go nuts.
Right.
Because they like him a lot. And he's got that kind of a lovable feature to him.
In one of my home games, there was 2 pirates that survived, or not. This wasn't in my home game, as a matter of fact. This was in Saltmarsh. We were playing Saltmarsh with Dammit Barry from Australia. He was DMing it, and we randomly named 2 pirates, Steve and Jerry, and then there was a whole subplot where Steve and Jerry got shipped together as a couple, and they became Onward, and Steve and Jerry's wedding became like a side subplot because people in chat were, push, this is a storyline, and it became a lot of fun. And so Steve and Jerry had plot armor, even though they started off as their life as pirates and such. I don't know. It's one of those things where those 2 characters, if anything had happened to, the party would have been like, all right, Saltmarsh, crack, now you're done for. Burn it to the ground.
Now we're coming after those guys. That's not cool. It's interesting. As we've been talking, I remember I finally like going through my notes. Like, I know what really sparked in my brain as to why this was something to talk about. And I wish I'd thought of it about 45 minutes ago. And the issue was this, because we've kicked around plot armor, kind of some pros and cons. We've admitted we kind of sometimes are willing to use it. We don't usually need to use it with most player characters because it's so hard to kill permanently a PC these days. But the issue at hand was at one of the other tables, the players knew they effectively had plot armor. And they were okay with it because it was a lighthearted beer and pretzels. We're just having a blast, rolling through here, killing stuff, having a grand old time. We don't want the nail bites. Oh my gosh, did we almost die? We just want we came, we saw, we kicked its ass.
Yeah.
And there's something to be said for that. But the reason it became an issue was his cleric stopped taking Revivify.
Sorry.
And exactly. And joked, I don't need it. No one ever dies.
Yeah.
And it was like, that moment was like, well, wait a minute. Now hold on a second.
All right.
And it becomes one of those where I could see myself in that conversation with a player who goes, I've kind of noticed we've had a lot of close calls, but in all of our close calls, I've never had to cast Revivify. I might stop memorizing it. I feel like that's a cue for me to say, no, you need to keep memorizing it and guaranteeing in the next combat, somebody goes down. At least once. Yeah. Well, because that's kind of part of that whole, like you said earlier, it's so hard to kill a character that I kind of feel like I would feel like as long as we all maintain the contract of we believe this is a nail biter.
Yes.
We believe that this is going to come down to high tension, and we enjoy that adrenaline rush from that belief, then everything else is material.
Yeah. As long as it propagates a good story and we're having fun with it, why not just keep having fun with it? So.
Yeah, well, and it reminds me too a little bit of thinking way back. Did you ever see Splash back in the day? Tom Hanks and Bo Derek?
No.
Yeah. Crap.
Clan of the Cave Bear.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Everything.
Yeah.
Everything in
that movie. Yes.
But if you think back to that, she's watching TV and this guy gets shot and she starts freaking out. And he explains, well, he's an actor. It's all make believe. You're not supposed to. It's kind of funny when you think about it. He shot a guy today and he'll get shot tomorrow, and it's going to be on a different show.
Yeah.
And it's like we already kind of go in to a lot of entertainment situations freaked out about who might die.
Right.
When in reality, it is just a story. that everyone lives through for the most part, with very, 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 very few exceptions. Every actor lives to see the end of the movie, no matter what happened to their characters. But I believe, and I could be mistaken, I think they've done studies that you can get just the same kind of like psychological highs and lows for fictional peril as you do observing real peril.
Yes.
So we're happy to trick ourselves into the emotional investments.
Again, one of those studies along those lines are that role play games, the memories that you create in role play games can be just as powerful as real memories, and so it really is a situation where these things happen, and people take it to different levels for different characters. And so I applaud LB for her. Nothing can happen to this character, okay? It will affect me as a player, as a person, human being, if anything happens to this NPC. And totes respect. It's how things should be in a good game.
I think, and I'll step back from that just enough to say, if you're of the opinion that that's not something a player can do, that's fine, as long as you can maintain a player group that's okay with you saying that.
Right.
I think personally, I agree with you too. I think if a player comes to me and says, look, I would be really uncomfortable if this happens, or taking my current plot line with Gerald from my Candlekeep game, he's had a few opportunities where he could be really, really evil.
Yeah.
And they probably will present other opportunities to him. And I could see the people I play saying, yeah, he can't get that evil. I don't care if he gets one of us alone. I don't care if he has the charm person spell. That would make me really, really upset if that happened. And I think if you play a game where you tell your players, look, hey, everything's on the table. This is Game of Thrones. If he can charm person and do real evil, he's going to do it.
Yep.
Then that's as long as your players know that's on the table and they have the option to say that I don't want to be at this table.
Right.
That's where that is. And if as a group you all kind of go, no, hey, we as people communicating within a game setting, we all have some agency as individuals to say, this is what we want out of this experience.
Yep.
It reminds
sorry.
Gerald is dead. He just doesn't know it yet.
Not yet.
Jesse, I don't know if Jesse's streaming tonight. You'll have to check it out. I do think she generally wins. Glad to see you here, CJ. And Crimson, I'm loving these things. I think when we get to the wrap up, we're gonna have to kind of recount all of these tactics you're sharing, because they're tangential to what we're talking about. So I want to do them full justice. But there's some neat tactics. Gerald probably is dead. We'll see what happens to him later, as it were. But we'll see. In fact, I actually have a plot line for him to see if the PCs take it. There's a reason he's doing what he's doing, and we'll see if they want to follow it or not.
Right.
They might opt to kind of just go a different direction, and see where that leads all of us. But I remember too, there was somewhere somebody said my players don't get to tell me what happens at the table. I think that was our Angry DM episode. We were talking about that, where it's like, no, man, this is a collaborative thing. We all gotta kind of share with each other. But we're at 10 after, so we should probably start to move into emails, into off-topic things that came up in chat, and other things. Crimson's been sharing in here a combination of using a Kobold Battlesmith Artificer with adjustable stilts and a revolver action rifle. And then points out that with the Mold Earth spell, can create a trench, duck into it, pop up with his stilts, and then riding a Steel Defender as a mount and using an owl as his familiar, gets advantage using pack tactics.
Yep. The familiar can take the help action.
Yep. And that's just an amazing combination of I almost want to say almost broken mechanics.
Well, and when they created the Steel Defender as a medium-sized creature, it was on it all small because I love me some small critters, goblins, kobolds, you name it. I played in a campaign where I asked if I could have I was playing a Warforged artificer, and I asked, could I take the disadvantages of being small, the smaller movement and blah blah blah, being smaller, so that I could be the centaur part of my steel or iron defender, steel defender, so that my warforge was the what would be the human of the centaur, and the iron defender was the mount part of it. And then we would, go to optimization change mode, and I would pop off, and then the head would fold out transformer style, and then I'd be a little robot, and he'd be, my steel defender. So yeah, as soon as they said that that's a medium creature, it was time to play. So yeah, that's awesome, Crimson. I love it.
It is. And I think I have a lot of respect for people that do a combination of this will be a neat combo with a playful level of let's see how broken this ends up. Because there are some fun combos you can pull there. Definitely a hoot and 3/4. Also stuff that come up in chat. Have you ever played Divinity Original Sin?
Yes.
1 or 2? What were your thoughts on 2?
I have not played 2. I have only played 1. 2 is so there was a time period I really wanted to play more of those games. Pillars of Eternity was one that I set aside a night of streaming just so I could play it, and then never transferred those to YouTube for whatever dumb reason. So those all vanished into eternity. But yeah, so there was a lot of those, and 2 has been sitting in my library so long that I uninstalled it because I have not played it. So yeah, sorry to go off on that tangent, but yeah, I do enjoy those games.
I wanted to like 2 so badly. I just couldn't find a difficulty setting I liked. It's weird. I played it on like the story mode, and I'm like, this isn't even interesting. I'm just Rolf stomping. So I took it up one step, and I couldn't survive a combat encounter.
Wow.
Like and maybe I'm just really bad at tactics, but I was like, that's like even I just couldn't do it. And I went online, like, well, yeah, part of the trick is you send one person to trigger the dialogue, and while they're locked in dialogue, you maneuver everyone else for backstabs, so that you're guaranteed to drop somebody in the first few seconds of the fight, and that makes the fight a lot easier. And I'm like, that's kind of cheesy. And the answer was, well, it's not cheesy if the game lets you do it.
It's bad game design.
Yeah. Now, to be fair, I mean, maybe I should have like grinded more, or maybe I was a little underleveled for the regions I was in.
Yeah.
But after enough, like I'm walking down the road, I get ambushed, and my party wipes. I'm like, oh man, I just can't play on this difficulty. Yeah. I need to shift to a difficulty that's a little bit less, and come back to it again. So I really wanted to like it. I was even thinking about games I was going to play on stream this week while I'm waiting for Mass Effect Legendary Edition to come out. And I also realized that Sub-Zero or Subnautica Below Zero officially lands on Xbox.
Nice.
This week. So I'm like really torn if I'm going to like alternate games.
Right.
Because now I've got 3 for my evening stream, for my non-D&D streams. Yeah. And I might have a third D&D game for me even before Jesse moves to Europe. Because there's a lot of interest among players to say, hey, we'd be interested in doing this. And I'm like, well, I could maybe get there and do this. Yeah, I could have probably done a better job here of like pre-planning, like this will happen, this will happen, this will happen. And that's not the game I like to play. I like a little bit of challenge while making my choices on the fly. So unfortunately, I think Divinity 2 might be a game I never see the end of.
Well, and it's funny because there were a lot of ancient games like Pool of Radiance, Azure Bonds, those type games. My buddy Super Scott Sam the Eagle, he loved those games at higher levels. I hated those games at higher levels because there was, you had to have 8 of the right spells cast in protections and whatnot before you opened the door for the 100 beholders that were on the roof. It was a thought process of how to get through the game.
I remember the Lich in Baldur's Gate, where you had to cast all your contingencies with magic missile, and then you have everyone with traps stack their traps.
Yep.
And then if you got really lucky with your rolls, you could beat it before it killed your whole party in one shot.
Yes.
But it took like, boom, the Lich appears, short dialogue, and then your computer freezes as it does a quick render of all those graphics.
Right.
And then you see if you won or not.
Right. Flash, you won.
Yeah. Yeah, Baldur's Gate is so much more to it because the randomness can destroy you. We were, curious that you would bring that point up now, Ear, because that's kind of where our conversation started today. That in a role-playing game, randomness can kill you, and what do we think about that?
That was why plot armor,
That's why, thus, plot armor. And I've been lucky, too, to wrap that up. I've only had one group ever say, we have plot armor, we can do whatever we want.
Yeah.
And that was my teenagers. And that's when I'm like, I think I'm done rolling behind the screen. I'm done. Like, if your guys die, you die. I'm not going to talk about character development between. We're not going to, maybe spend some time in the week doing art of the characters. Like, nope, this is the game you want to play. I will do my best to run it. And after about 3 weeks, I went, I don't like running this. I just don't like running this.
I go back to my college, game in the summer of like 91, where I had the 19 players in 3 teams playing a Game of Thrones type game. And it was backstab, chaos, politics. Everyone in that game knew that at any moment, someone from the other team could break through the door and fireball the place, so they were ready for it. But again, that was so long ago that the character development wasn't there.
No, and that is something that has changed so much over the years, that they've really wanted us to put more. They've noticed that the shift in audience wants more of those opportunities while leaving room for the grognard to say, just let me make. I mean, if you go on D&D Beyond, you can make a character of any race, class, level combo, and it'll just pitch one out to you, hit print, and now I'm ready to go.
Yep.
And if that's all the backstory I want, no muss, no fuss, ease done.
Right.
Which I respect. What have you got coming up this week? What are we looking forward to?
So I have Masks on Thursday over at Indoor Adventurers at 8:30 Eastern Standard Time. And then Sunday, I will be back to Griftlands, playing with, toys and whatnot here in the tavern as we romp through space as a total bruh. He's like disinherited and it's not cool. So that's the main character. I hate him. And the first 2 characters I adored, and they both died. And so I didn't see the completions of their storyline. Now this is the 3rd and last character, and I want him to die so bad. And he'll probably survive and finish the storyline. But that's Sunday, and then I'm back here Tuesday to
See what happens
and talk more.
And if you have topics for us to talk about, by the way, you can send an email to oldtimertavern@gmail.com, and we will have an opportunity to address those. We also love it if you pop into our Discord and pitch ideas to us for shows there. There's always something to look forward to. The challenge with schedules, for those of us that are on multiple streams, is that the Twitch schedule oftentimes is dedicated to our channels. So if we spend a lot of time chilling out with other people, those schedules can get a little bit weird.
My schedule is always posted on my Twitter. Right, it's pinned right at the top, so you can always find it.
And the name is the same, Graybeard Tavern, no S.
Yep, correct.
So there's that. I might be back later tonight for more solo gaming. Since Mrs. Noir is working tonight, there's not a lot going on in the house. So I might just take advantage of the quiet to come down and slip some more time shooting aliens, literally. But then Wednesday night, we're going to continue Candlekeep. They are going into part 3 of Book of the Raven, which has some really fun plot twists planned, and I'm excited for that. And then Sunday night, I am so geeked for this. I am starting the full campaign of Curse of Strahd, 5th edition. Not the abbreviated one I've done, and I'm planning to do in about a month with Raven, or the Raven Armed, who's the Captain Jack Sparrow gentleman, and a few other players. I'm going to be running a Ravenloft one-shot with them. We're just going to do the castle and the streamlined castle. We're only hitting the rooms that are important. Yeah. So like that, oh, look, a random room with some vampire spawn. Now we're skipping that one. That's not interesting.
Right.
I just want the bullet points. I want them to come out going, oh my God, that was intense. yes, it was. That's the goal. I want you to either die, or I want you to win by the skin of your teeth and feel epic. But we're going to run Curse of Strahd starting Sunday, and we've got like a clean schedule ahead for that. And then, like I said, we've got probably a third game coming up once Jesse moves. I'm in the process now of recruiting and audition. It's weird to say this, and auditioning people.
Right. Well, it is though, because you've got to get the right, particularly if you're streaming it, you've got to get the right combination of personalities, demeanors, and it's got to match up with what you're trying to run. If you've got a thespian who wants to role play and feel and cry on stream, and you're not running that game, it's going to be a waste. It's going to be a waste of their time and your time to have them at your table.
Which, one of the things I love having Azteki on Sundays is the nonstop pop culture references. Like, it's just, we have the one thing I'm proud of, all of my games are fun to go to.
Nice.
And that's what I want.
Yeah.
The last comment goes to Crimson with I like the Pathfinder 2nd edition's version of Artificer, the inventor for its wealth of options. I have never played. I will have to look into that. I like that. I didn't even realize I was making an Artificer when I made my little halfling that builds massive clockworks. Like, I guess that's what she is.
Yep.
It was not part of my plan for her, but it's kind of the way things worked out. So there's all those great places you can find us. If you enjoyed listening to this, please give us a review on Apple Podcasts so more people can find this podcast, where we get together every week to talk about dungeons and sometimes a little bit of dragons, and so forth. And until the next time we all get together, please download more podcasts and stay safe. If you're here with us on Twitch, I am obviously going to send you off somewhere. It's really crazy. I was watching a streamer, and they were set up on a computer in their kitchen. They were doing a kind of a random cooking stream with their husband, and it was nice to watch. And she got to the end. She's like, "Well, I don't think I can raid you guys from here because I'm using my phone and I can't type in anything. But you know what? Let's be honest. Raids really don't do much anyways." And I'm like, no, I've met a lot of interesting streamers through raids. Not every raid goes somewhere where I like where I landed, but I've met a lot of interesting people. So I'm big on raiding. I like to send people off to watch somebody else. If you can stay and give them a watch, that's great. If you can't, well, you know what? Just wave on your way through. But I'm going to send you guys off to Sophie Darling. She's a streamer out of Northern Ireland, an absolutely adorable human being. A ton of fun to watch, a ton of fun to listen to, and just an amazingly good personality. Any parting thoughts before we queue up the raid?
Before we go off raiding, don't be afraid to ask for plot armor for your favorite NPCs.
Absolutely. And don't be afraid to just talk to your DMs. We are human beings, despite the fact that we hold your fate and those of your loved ones in our hands. I think I'm just going to say until next time. Good night.